So this video is going to cover the A and B drive systems and idler pulleys that go on the top of the printer. We're going to assemble them today. There's a couple of little tips about the heat set inserts and that sort of thing. We're going to get them mounted on the printer itself and have our drive system ready. We're not going to route the belts in this video. That'll be another video, but we're going to do that. So let's get started. Okay, our first task is to get these heat set threaded inserts set into our blocks here. I've already done one side, the A side. Now we're working on the B side. So I'm just going to drop them into these holes. I've got my soldering iron over here. This one is controllable, so it can go as low as possible. So right now I'm at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. ABS glass transition temperature is a little over 200, 220, something like that. So I don't want to be super hot. One mistake you can make with these threaded inserts is cranking your soldering iron up to, I don't know, 500 degrees. That's other problems associated with that too, but overheating, and these will just get way out of control. I've also got a couple of little Allen wrenches here, some that'll fit down inside, so if I need to realign them, some that I can use to push them down. And basically you just kind of hold on there, try to keep everything straight. Again, I'm at 350, so I'm going as low as my soldering iron will actually go on temperature, and we're gonna sink this little guy in here. The two outside ones, the instructions say that they have to be below the surface. Not exactly sure why. I guess maybe the screws they're using are a little bit longer, or maybe, I don't really know. But we're gonna they have little ledges down inside these holes when they bottom out, so that's what we're going to go for, something like that. Now we'll have to zoom in to see what actually happened there, but this one, it says, ends up more or less flush with this surface on top. I'm sorry you can't see much of it, but I'm trying to do this as perpendicular to the surface as possible so that the screw threads end up aligned the way I think they should be. Like that. And then this one is also supposed to be below the surface. You can always do more, but it's really hard to do less. So like if you need to pull one of these out, it's kind of hard to do, or maybe not possible to do. It would probably result in a reprint if you had to change this up. I do like these things, but they do add a little bit of complexity that somebody who hasn't done this before could certainly mess these things up. And somebody who has done it before can mess them up. I'm going to put this one a little deeper. The main thing when you're doing this part, though, is don't overheat on your, I think that one must be set, temperature on your soldering iron. Because you can get these so hot that they would just burn through here. And so there's threaded inserts, and I've already put them in this piece. I think there are some more to add later, but the instructions are not saying to do that yet. Currently, the instructions say to match up B with B and A with A, and something like that. We'll come back in a second with some more progress. All right, I've built one of these. I believe this is the B. Let's see. Yeah, this is the A, the parts for A over here, the B. They are not exactly the same. They're very similar, but they're sort of mirror images, but not quite that either. So if you are building these, then make sure the instructions do go through and they build one of them, the A part, and then they start over and build the B part. And there's a reason for that, and it has to do with the pattern for these. Well, they're little bearings that end up being pulleys when you stack them together, and also the spacing. You can't even really see it, but the spacing of the drive pulley down in there is different on both of these. The one thing that the instructions don't say, and I couldn't find, and I'm not sure about, is which side you should have the wires coming out of. So what I did is I made the wires where they are inboard. I don't know if that's going to be best or not. Maybe we'll have to change that later, but that's what I went with for now. And we'll see if that works or not. I did have to add one more heat set threaded insert here, and on this one, well, this one here. So it used the same process as before. So how these go together is not terribly complicated. There are a few issues with, make sure that you're building the right set. So if you're building the A pieces, then make sure you're following the A instructions in the book. You take two of the M35s and go down through here, and then that's where you're going to build your little pulley stacks. And I've got all of the pieces over here. So for this piece, I will need a washer. Actually, this stack of pulleys is the same on A and B. And then you take one bearing, and they do have this little rim on them, so you can get them aligned so that when you stack two of them together, it makes a little pulley. And then we need two shims. Now, it does make a note that if you bought washers for these shims, you might have problems. They're using shims because they have a specific thickness, where washers may or may not have a specific thickness. They have, a roundabout thickness, but the way washers are made, they're punched out, and so that creates one side that's got a little, possibly has a burr on it. So make sure if you use washers here that you take into account that they may not be all exactly the same. And it seems to be better to use the shims. All right, get that on there. All of this stuff is so tiny, it is difficult to handle sometimes. All right, there's that stack. And then this is for the A piece, and so on here, I'm going to use one of my printed spacers, or shim, another stack of bearings to make a pulley, and then another shim on top of that. Okay. And then you do need to go ahead and put your tensioner in here because it's going to get trapped in here, and if you don't put it in now, you'll have to take it apart to put it back in. So we got this. The instructions don't explicitly say to put nuts on here, but otherwise it's going to fall apart on you. So I'm going to put a nut there, and this one just poke through. Nut here. We'll tighten that up later. The M3x30s are going to screw in from the top into those threaded inserts. So that's why they had to be a little bit deeper, is because they're using a slightly shorter screw. So if you don't set those deep enough, they're not going to reach the threaded inserts. So something like that. And that. Again, we'll tighten that up in a minute. Want to make sure we have movement here. You could go ahead and put this on, I suppose, the little tensioning knob. I have noticed that a lot of the builds, use an accent color here, and that does look nicer than just my all gray, so I might do that later. Here is, again, the wire. I've already set the height. They give you a distance here, but you want to check and make sure. Actually, I've set it too high. I don't know if you can tell, but the teeth in here should line up with this row, and it's definitely too high, so I need to drop that down some. They do make a mention about these grub screws being a problem for many issues if you don't get them tight enough. And well, actually they recommend putting Loctite on them, thread locker, which I'm not going to put on just yet. I want to get everything built and then put on any thread locker that I want to use. That does mean some disassembly, but I'd rather do that. These steppers do have a flat surface, and so you should line up one of the grub screws with that flat surface. It does have 2 set screws on it, and so one of them is going to be off on the round side, but one of them should be on the flat side. And again, I'm going to put the wires inboard. Inboard is facing this direction, and then I take, I believe it is the 35s. Yes, the M3 by 35s, and screw down into the stepper motor. It does say not to tighten these a lot when you're finished, because these, if you tighten this too much, then it's going to inhibit the tensioning ability of your little tensioning nut here. And that's all there is to this. I'll tighten it up, tighten the outside ones up, and get these snug so that it still has some movement. You can see on this one how I can adjust the position of this by tensioning it. So that's what you want. All right, so we'll finish that up, and next we will mount these, and then we've got some idlers to assemble that look similar, and they're going to go on the front side of the printer. Okay, so I've mounted one of these. Now what we need to do, we need to take these nuts that I put on here temporarily to keep the screws from falling out. We need to take those off, because we're going to use this hole for this screw, one of these preloaded nuts for this screw, another preloaded nut for this hole, and then these 3 guys are going to be these 3 holes. So there's a lot of little getting things lined up. It's not impossible. What I did was I took a long Allen wrench, dropped it down in the hole, or down in the slot here, which I'll need a shorter one to go this way, I think. But I would measure, all right, so this screw, the nut needs to be that deep in there, and so I would slide one nut that deep. I can't slide it now because there's stuff in there. And slide it that far. I tried looking down in there with the light, but it's just too deep in there to actually see what's going on. So you had to do a dead reckoning type approach to get them lined up. So I'm going to do that with this one. Take these nuts off of here, use this threaded hole in the end, and then one of these nuts for the second one, and then these 4 will line up with that. And like I said, I put the wires inboard here so that they're kind of right in the middle. I don't know if that's going to be the best approach or not, but that's the one I'm going with. And it looks like there's not a lot of room on the outside, and I don't really want them pointing this way, or maybe this way would be okay, but I'd rather them not be in a bind, like kinked, if it's possible. All right, so I'm going to mount that, and we'll come back and work on the front idlers. Okay, we've got our front idler here. There's nothing special about them. There's 2 printed parts, shim, bearing, shim, and an M3 by 35 to hold it together. This M335 is going to screw into this hole, and then there's a hole here for another 3 by 35 that will use this preloaded nut. Now there are a couple of things. These are not identical, so you've got one that's going to put the belt lower, one is going to put the belt higher, and you do have to get them on the right side. This is the higher one on the left side, and you have to preload 4 nuts into this slot. And I'm assuming, I haven't actually looked ahead, but I'm assuming, well, it does not say to preload the other side. Okay. The other side, it doesn't say to preload, so we're gonna go with, we're good to go ahead and put this guy in. So one of the things with these captured nuts and all of that is that sometimes you miss, and at least my kit came with a set of magnets which are handy for grabbing the screw and pulling it back out of there, so that you can try again. So let's see if we can. Last time what I did is I checked that hole should line up more or less with the end of this, and I kind of just put it in place that way, and then see if we can actually hit the thing. think we did. If it's kind of stiff feeling, that probably means the nut inside there is cocked, and you know, one way or the other. So just back out a little bit, you know, a piece of a turn, and try again. And we caught it that time, and it looks good. And that should be all of our belt paths for the head moving in here. So that'll be good. And then it does tell us to make sure that we've got everything lined up. It goes through some diagrams. So this should get us through page 57. Next, we're going to put the Z-axis on, so the up and down part here. And we'll come back. I don't know if we'll do that today, or maybe we can. I don't know. I'll probably make it into its own video and chop this one off right here.